True Help Tuesday, and the truth will set you free. 6 minutes late? I'm telling you, that coronavirus. No, this was technical difficulty, okay, had computer and everything. Okay, now, I passed out cards tonight, okay, because we're going over certain information. And some of this can be challenging and can, like, scare people. Wisdom is knowing that we were all one. Love is what it feels like, and compassion is what it acts like. Cool. Okay, because we're going to need that. They were the best of times, they were the worst of times. The times that tried men's souls. I'm talking about our world 2020. We're going to go through a couple of things. Now, what I originally wanted to do was to ask these questions and give you the answers to them. And I thought they were pertinent. Like, how is the virus identified? Could the virus identification that we're hearing in the news and the social media and everything not be accurate? Possibly. Okay, how resistant is the virus? Like, is it some super being that will eat up all our old people, even the children left to fend for themselves? How contagious is the virus? Do we really need to cancel concerts and close off countries? How do you strengthen your immune system? Is the vaccine and drugs the only way? How do you disinfect or prepare you and your home? Yes, disinfecting your home. We need it as clean as a hospital. And how do you prepare for your home? So now these are the questions I originally intended to ask and answer, except recent events. So let's go to this. Now, we're looking at Johns Hopkins. I pulled this off just a couple of hours ago. So far, total confirmed cases 118,000, deaths 4,262, recovered. Now, you could, if you want to, subtract the recovered from the people that have it and know that we have around 8 billion people on our planet and know that this is a very small thing. But why are the governments going crazy? Because that's 64,000 people recovered. So are the numbers not accurate? And we could get into the fear porn and say, well, the numbers aren't real. This is stiff. It's engineered. Well, let's just go with what we know. Viruses are well-organized molecular parasites. 45% of your DNA is viral. Viruses, like when they say the spreadability factor is 2.6 to 3, I mean, I just sneezed on a friend. Well, okay, it was a fake sneeze, but it travels 10 feet and you're about 11 feet away, so shit, I got to step up to get you. Okay, but it can't replicate on him. It has to utilize his RNA, if we're talking about the corona, to replicate. Now, I'm the first person, so I'm the one that ate the snake, ate the bat, got infected with the Wuhan corona, whatever. Okay, I'm the first one in line. So now it's got to use his RNA to replicate. Now, he's going to give it to my doctor friend, okay? Now, it's going to use his RNA to replicate. Now, it's a bummer because my buddy here, he wants to infect somebody, except he's like second in line, so he might be able to infect someone, maybe not. Okay, because it is completely different. My virus that I got, which has utilized my RNA to replicate, is now down 3 people. This is why when we look at the infectious rate, it doesn't just infect like everybody. So we got to quarantine everybody because somebody sneezed when they walked by. Okay, it will infect those 3 people. Okay, because it has to utilize their DNA, RNA, depending on the virus. So in January, the end of January, Lancet developed this mathematical model based on every viral infection known. Okay, so whether this is lab created, it seems to be responding the same way as normal viruses. So it's going to peak around April, okay, and then it's going to start to decline. Now, I'm wondering, because do you hear a lot about the coronavirus today? Every news media, everybody, all you got to do is go to the store and you're going to wonder, wow, somebody must be sneezing a lot because there's no toilet paper on the shelves. Okay? And they must be thirsty because there's no water. I just saw this one report of this older gentleman going to the stores in Italy, and he's going, "There's no pasta on the shelves." Okay, and it was subtitled, okay, in English, but he's saying this didn't happen in World War II. So what's going on? So Wall Street, um, is Wall Street behind the delay in declaring this a pandemic? Well, let's just see, because if it's acting just like a virus, why are people acting like it's the end of the world? Okay, in June 2017, the World Bank announced the creation of special bonds that we used to prevent a previously created pandemic emergency financing facility in the event of an officially recognized World Health Organization pandemic. Now, in our culture, we're actually betting on money and trading money. That's kind of cool because money isn't really backed by anything. You will know how insane that is if you actually think about it. Okay, now, they were essentially sold under the premise that those who were invested in the bonds would lose their money if any of the 6 deadly pandemics hit, including the coronavirus. Yet, if a pandemic did not occur before the bond's maturation of July 15th, 2020, investors would receive what they had really paid for the bonds back in addition to the interest and premium payments on the bonds. Critics, however, have called the unnecessary convoluted system World Bank enabled looting that enriches intermediaries and investors instead of the fund's intended targets. In this case, low-income countries struggling to fight a pandemic. Notably, the World Health Organization determines if the pandemic meets the criteria that would see investors' money be funneled into the PEF as opposed to in their own pockets, which would take place if no pandemic is declared between now and the bond set coming in July. Now, again, I don't know where the panic came from because the World Health Organization said it is not a pandemic yet. Of course, 3 days ago, the UN declines to label COVID-19 as a pandemic while outbreaks multiply. This was 3 days ago. So, are you aware that the World Health Organization says, don't worry, it's not a pandemic yet? Okay, countries are closing their borders, okay? Israel has just implemented that if you come in there, you're going to be blocked off for 19 days. They blocked off the exits to Iran. I doubt if there's any military procedures going on there, but they just blocked it off to wall off the virus. And then they're blocking off in Italy. They're quarantining people. They're stopping concerts from being put on. They're saying no groups. They're stopping soccer events in there. So, all around the world, people's lives are being disrupted, okay? But it's not a pandemic. And in fact, when the World Health Organization was asked this, they said, so far they've resisted describing the crisis as saying such a pandemic might spook the world further and lead some countries to lose hope of containing the virus. Right. Okay, so let's just go way back. I know I'm old enough to remember 2009. Ask yourself if any of this sounds familiar, because then we're going to go over how infectious the virus is, how to wipe it out, how to strengthen your immune system. But I think it's pertinent to know that there's financial people trying to hold down the expression that this is a pandemic. And frankly, I'd like it to not be a pandemic too, but it is involving the world. And I for sure as hell don't want to declare it a state of emergency because the government can arrest us then, okay, and quarantine us and force vaccinate and force medicate us. I mean, the Nazis had nothing on us. Okay, so April 23rd, 2009, so think way back then, the world first heard reports of a mysterious bird flu, but it was also kind of a pig flu, and it was a hybridized. And by 30th, so this is 7 days later, the World Health Organization issued a Phase 5 alert, even though 10 people had died from it. 10, Phase 5 alert. Look out, we don't know what's going on. It's from this Mexican pig farm. Wall Street revealed that a pandemic sent stock prices soaring. Drug companies, antiviral drugs, rapid flu tests, Sanofi, Pasteur, GlaxoSmithKline, Novartis, Baxter, Johnson & Johnson. Drug companies likely to benefit. Okay, sounds great, doesn't it? With 10 people dying, the world is going crazy within 7 days. In all the chaos, and again, this is 2009, let's not think it's today. All the chaos being taken behind the scenes, politicians and government officials prepared the way for implementation of future quarantine and mass vaccination of citizens with experimental vaccines and drugs that have passed the normal FDA regulations for demonstrating purity and potency. If a public health emergency has been excused to grease the skids to rush to market experimental drugs, the creation of this pharmaceutical company stockholders' dream scenario is defined by shock, fear, anger, deep sadness. Congress reacted quickly and passed the Homeland Security Act, while CDC's officials pulled out state legislation. Model State Emergency Health Powers Act, which is still in effect, actually gave sweeping new powers to public health officials to use the militia, if necessary, to quarantine citizens and to force them to use experimental drugs and vaccines after the U.S. Secretary of Health declares a public health emergency. That is still in effect. It's been in effect for 11 years. So whether the false pandemic of 2009, because we know countries even sued the World Health Organization to say, look, you guys said it was a pandemic and it wasn't really a big deal, okay, that it just created panic. Now, again, just thinking that this might be a start scenario, correlated. Now, again, this is 2009. Falsely predicted the global swine flu epidemic that could kill as many as 2 billion people over the next year. Anyone? Sound familiar? At the time, evidence suggested that the H1N1 was bioengineered in the U.S. laboratory. Vaccines produced for it were extremely hazardous and potentially lethal. No national or global emergency existed, no pandemic or epidemic occurred. The CDC estimated that between 8,000 and 17,000 deaths resulted from the strain. Fear-mongering at the time aimed to convince people to take experimental, untested, toxic, extremely dangerous vaccines that can damage the human immune system and cause health problems, range from annoying to life-threatening. Does that sound familiar? Because that's what's going on. Now, when we look at this, why is all of this stuff going on, countries closing their border, but the World Health Organization is silent? Could it be that they don't want to say it's a pandemic till July so that some investors can get money? Kind of makes sense. I mean, this is back in 2018 when I did this slide, but back then the US dollar was used for a lot of transactions. And this is what we were doing. It was called a petroleum dollar because Nixon got us off of the gold standard, so the money wasn't backed by anything. Then it was backed by oil, and of course we went to war to keep that buoyed up, but it's not backed by that anymore. Now this was back in 2018-19. They were saying the next turn down, financial operators are racking up profits in the sea of liquidity. Release of cheap money has resulted in issuance of trillions of dollars in debt. And that's what our country does. Okay, I should say company. Okay, because they are controlled by other companies. They're printing money. The debt globally to 325 trillion, more than 3 times the size of the global GDP. That means the entire world is in more debt than they make, and in fact 3 times more than they make. Could anyone run a household if you owed 3 times more than you make? It would be more of a challenge. So what do we need to do? People are always asking, what do I need to do? Well, I'd say get toilet paper, but the shelves are devoid of it. Okay, water. Okay, there's certain things that you can do, but food supplies are the best. I mean, the 5-gallon bucket that I get for Sprouts, I've got a couple of these, one on the boat, one at home, and it makes 150 pounds of Sprouts. It's organic, lasts for 5 years, doesn't need to be refrigerated. The Patriot stuff is okay. It's not really good tasting, but at least it'll keep you alive. So look at getting extra food. If you don't have a lot of money, when you're going shopping, okay, for anything but toilet paper, because all the shelves are devoid, okay, you buy, if you're buying something, get a BPA free can, get one extra can of food. Okay, just a little bit. Get an extra bag of rice or beans. These things last for a long time. Put them in mason jars. Okay, it's just prudent. Okay, now sprouts are amazing. Sproutpeople.org. You'll find out that you could save this stuff. It's fantastic. Water storage, look for water storage. And again, we're going to go through, we've got tons of videos on what to do with waste management, water storage, and everything else. But I just found this recent thing where you put a plastic bag inside of the bathtub, costs around $50, and it has a pump on it. You could, use it to wash, flush flush toilets with, so it's really smart. Look at local food harvesting, because obviously, and people are in a complete dead panic now. What's going to happen when they start rounding people up? We already have limited access to group meetings. Okay, we have probably 35, 40 people here, and a few thousand at home where they're safe and quarantined. Okay, so if we look at this group here, this would be too big of a group to have. Okay, without official registration. Costa Mesa, which is a town close by, they actually had in front of the restaurant somebody checking people's temperature. And so if your temperature was too high, and my temperature's getting high just talking about it, then you had to go to a different restaurant. Okay? Yeah, I would say please close the restaurant. Okay, so skills that you need, okay, and this is just basic common sense. Food, transportation, water, shelter, waste management, and we've covered this in all number of different videos. Just be prepared. Okay, I'm not saying the government is going to take over and break home your doors, and you could say, well, not over my dead body. Just think of how many people were saying, hell, healthy people 2020, there's no way I'm going to line up for my adult vaccination. How many people are in such a panic state? You got a corona vaccine? I don't care if it's untested. Please use me. Because panic makes people do stupid stuff. Russian. Pray to God. I like that. But keep rowing ashore. And I like the Arabic proverb, pray to God, but tie up the camels. Let's just be prepared. It's prudent and it's smart. And so by preparing, let's look at some of these questions. So, oh, by the way, this is a really cool guy. Okay, Dr. Tim O'Shea has wrote a number of books, particularly on vaccines and health. And go to his website, thedoctorwithin.com, and read the March newsletter. I had to read it because it was funnier than heck, and you could tell this guy's sense of humor. And he thinks the coronavirus will vanish overnight. You look at Mike Adams, he thinks it's the end of the world. Okay, not just the virus, but it's actually designed to change society. I'm hoping Dr. Tim O'Shea is right. Why coronavirus will vanish overnight? And remember, you read this in early March, because I just read you a bunch of stuff from 2009, so I thought that was cool. For those addicted to the everyday Kool-Aid of the corporate tabloid media at CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, Yahoo News, you're in for a big surprise, because last month's newsletter dealt with the historical context of the newest boutique epidemic. This month we'll cover why this phantasm is being kept alive in the absence of scientific evidence, and why it's about to vanish. You don't have to be much of a fortune teller to see all the signs falling in place, the fading illness, despite desperate attempts by the tabloid media to keep it alive, lack of legitimate testing proving patients all have the same disease, and the recent funding, which always signals the end of any boutique epidemic, of $8 billion. He's fun. There's a reason, that he speaks on almost every cruise with me. He's fun. But you got to read the newsletter. I mean, plus he's got the sarcastic tone, but he backs everything up with science. So let's look at the PCR test. Okay. Now this is called polymer chain reaction. It was invented back in the 80s. Now this is the inventor of the test, Dr. Carey Mullis. In 40 years, okay, so this was 40 years ago, doctors have never come up with any test more accurate than this very flawed theoretical estimate of microbial activity. And then he won the Nobel Prize for inventing this test to detect HIV and explains its limitations. Quantitative PCR is an oxymoron. PCR is intended to identify substances qualitatively, but by its very nature, it's unsuited for estimating numbers. Although there is a common misimpression that the viral load test actually count the number of viruses in the blood. Okay, so anyone in healthcare, I want to read that again just in case that was like, whoa, dude, I didn't get it. Okay, a common misimpression is that viral load tests actually count the number of viruses in the blood. These tests cannot detect free infectious viruses at all. They can only detect proteins that are believed, in some cases wrongly, to be uniquely to HIV. These tests can detect genetic sequences of viruses, but not viruses themselves. His testimony was used to get OJ off because it was just not the same and not accurate. Now, Wired Corona Test inaccurate. Now, this is another website, medicine.net. The false negatives may be due to insufficient amount of viral material collected. Because remember, if I'm sneezing on this guy and I've got my virus that's utilized my RNA, they're going to check that in there to see what's different. What's my proteins makeup and what's the viral protein makeup. Now, I just gave it to this gentleman, and it's got to use his RNA to do it. So now you're going to compare his RNA or his viral or sputum to the stuff that I just spit out, and then you're going to see, well, these are different, so this must be that patient's RNA. These are similar, so they must be part of the virus. So let's start assembling it. Is it the same virus, or is it one of the other 500 different coronaviruses? Or is it one of the other viruses that can cause it, like influenza or some type of bacterial infection? Anyone see a problem with that? Okay. Tests may result in false negatives if the patient is tested too early. You're right, I just sneezed on you. It takes around 5 days to 2 weeks to develop an immune system response. Test him in 5 days. Faulty reagents. The CDC admitted that they distributed kits that don't really work and give inconsistent results. How problematic could that be? Okay, now here's another article published in 2016 talking about how there's a lot of problems with this test, that it's really, really hard to get an accurate read. However, the extreme sensitivity of such techniques can easily result in contamination. The FDA, because false positive polymerase chain reaction will fail our mission. So you look at this problem after problem. Here's another one, PCR test. Is not a test that isolates. Again, I want you to hear this. PCR, polymerase chain reaction test, is not a test that isolates, identifies, or even detects any particular virus. Wait, I'm sorry, how are they identifying this? Anyone? Oh, they're using this test. Okay, just checking. If you're sick and have some viral fragments, the PCR test just amplifies those sequences millions of times from the sample. Okay, a little research shows us that any association with viral disease from the PCR is just a theory at best, just an estimate. Nothing like exact science that definitively says Ebola or HIV or corona is present in the patient. Anyone want to say it with me? Wow! That's insane! Okay, so we know that the testing is not accurate, and the testing, the guy that invented it says it's not even good to identify if this is a particular virus, let alone one of the strains of virus. Could it identify SARS or this or that, and you've done it 100,000 times, 80,000 of which is in China, and no one has made a false positive or a false negative? So how resistant is the virus? That would be a good question. Yes or yes? Okay, because we have insane people spraying everything, walking around with masks, trying to disinfect restaurants and everything else. And I heard a a funnier article because we came from LAX. I was speaking in Missouri this past weekend, which was a ball. And in fact, that's where I got the card from one of the speakers there. One of the speakers there, buddy, Dr. Bonsi. Thanks, man. You did it. I love this guy. He's brilliant. So anyway, we get off the plane Sunday. Anyone been to LAX on a Sunday? Packed or packed? This was like a ghost land. There was nobody there. And so consequently, one of the benefits of Corona, man, you get in there, all the fear people are sitting at home. There was right up to the baggage checkout and, right onto the bus. No, it was amazing, really fun. So the coronavirus dies at around 80 degrees. Okay, it dies at around 80 degrees. This is why you're taught to drink hot water, hot tea, sit in a sauna to build it up. This is why dryers, okay, can knock out the virus because they can heat up the clothes. This is why regular washing kills it. The virus is a large size diameter, so a normal mask works. So you don't need to be hoarding anything. And if you're looking at a normal mask, just a really attractive scarf would look cool. That would look good. It goes well. If someone sneezes you, it goes around 10 feet. It can live on metal for at least 12 hours. One of our patients is from Thailand, and they got a big container with film that was shipped from China. And they said, well, how do we disinfect it? I said, well, unless there's a sneezing Chinese in there, all you got to do is, if it's been by itself for 12 hours, you're okay. Okay, that's it. Because it's a well-organized molecular parasite. Okay, if you're going to be handling stuff, you got to increase your vitamin C, vitamin D3. I mean, it just makes sense. Now, the virus can only live on your hands for 5 to 10 minutes. So one of the benefits of having the mask is that you're not going to be touching your nose or your hair or your eyes or anything. Because, I mean, what could you touch in 5 minutes? God, I gotta get out more. Okay, vitamin C, what kills it? What kills it? Okay, we know hot water, we know heat, we know washing the hands with non-antibacterial soap. The reason I say non-antibacterial, because the triclosan that's in most of the antibacterial ones, it kills the weak bacteria and will make stronger bacteria. Okay, so you just want regular soap that works regularly good. You can use essential oils, fantastic. That kills about 96% of all pathogens. But you don't want to go in and scrub your hands with this antibacterial stuff like the people in China are doing, the healthcare professionals, and they're getting rashes, sick, everything. They're being destroyed by it. Expose yourself to the sun. Okay, drink hot water. Normal laundry detergent kills the virus. Okay, and if you can't wash your clothes, just set them in the sun. It's literally just what grandma would tell you. Now, the masks, it's interesting because we have one patient that's making the masks, and they look cool. They really do. But I said, okay, now what are you making them for? And there was silence, and I said, well, you got 3 reasons to have a mask. One, it looks really cool. Okay, kind of badass. And she gave me a blank stare because I would too. And the other one is so that you're not going to catch something. And the other one is so you're not going to give something. Okay, does that make sense? If somebody's got a 4th reason to wear it, okay, just to be one of the crowd. Okay, so if you're sneezing and coughing, this is beautiful. It will limit that. But also, you're going to have virus all over your body, in your hair, and everything else. Because if one person in a household is taking an antibiotic, you're going to find antibiotic-resistant bacteria on every member of the household. If one person has a virus in a house, you're going to see that virus on everyone else. Now, will the virus replicate into a pathogenic form on everyone? No, not if they have sufficient amounts of vitamin C, vitamin D3, and they don't have physical, chemical, or emotional stress, and they have a normal functioning immune system. And even if they do get sick, it'll last around, a week to a week and a half, and they'll be okay, as long as they don't have secondary comorbid conditions. But this study, and again, this was out of Emerging Infectious Disease Journal, They found out that the key finding is less than 50% of the adherent to the mask use, and there was no difference in the people that wore it or didn't wear it. So it's really, the only benefit is that you're not going to be wanting to touch your face with a mask on, and if you're sneezing or coughing, you're going to get it. But if you're wearing to prevent yourself from getting it, unless someone is going to sneeze at you and you hold up the mask to catch it, that's okay. So what do we know so far is this is about as infectious as the cold. So that means it'll infect three people. I mean, I sneeze on you, you sneeze on him, you sneeze on her, and you can't give it to anyone else because it's so weakened in you. Okay, although everyone would want your virus because you're cute. But measles will infect 12 people. So this means that we can go through that scenario 12 times. Okay, so when you look at it, but each person has to use their RNA. The mortality seems to be around 2%, just like it did like 2 months ago. Okay, the secondary infections, we know that if you treat the body with things that weaken the immune system, like steroids, antibiotics, aspirin was one of the biggest killers. If you look up the 1918 flu, look at the treatment for aspirin. They found out that high dose aspirin caused bleeding of the lungs. Okay, and this is one of the reasons hemorrhagic fever was so popular back then. So no interventions. Now, again, CDC says 80% of the people have mild illness. They don't even go to the hospital. Okay, about 15% need chicken soup from grandma. Okay, they're recommending medications, which there's not many medications that you would give somebody with a viral infection. But they're saying a few people have to be hospitalized. Now, when you're talking America, we have the sickest population in the world. 60% of our adult population is a chronic illness or disease. Now, do you think fear would cause this? Will cause an illness? Our emergency rooms are already almost filled. So when you hear, all the hospitals are full, there's not a lot of available beds there anyway for this sick group. Okay, because why? The more people you get in the hospital, the more people you can bill. Okay, and hospital is a business. So we're not designed to do this. So you'll see temporary buildings everywhere. Okay, now, when we look at this, okay, what are the symptoms? How can you tell if you have the coronavirus with a regular cold or comparing it to? It's almost impossible. Okay, some people will say you'll have a runny nose with a regular cold. You'll have no runny nose with this one. You'll have a productive cough where you're spitting up sputum here. You'll have generally a dry cough with this one. Do you really think 100% of the people are going to have a dry cough and no runny nose based on the different RNA attached to the virus that they got in their system? Anybody? Anybody? Okay, this is why they can't really tell. And in some states, they've even stopped testing the way they did back in H1N1. Because if you have a cold and we're all scared, it must be the cold that we're scared of. Okay, then it'll infect the throat for about 3 to 4 days. So now really, really smart people are right now going to start taking healthy amounts of vitamin C. Okay, couple thousand milligrams a day makes sense. 5,000 makes sense. If you go up to 10,000, you're going to be sitting down somewhere, okay, because you might have bowel tolerance. Okay, dad, my butt's throwing up. Okay, I still love when my kids say that. Okay, so this way you start doing it, and you're going to be protected because vitamin C kills the replication and directly kills the virus. You can also take vitamin D3. So if you're doing this now, if you're living in this panic population, start taking the supplements. If you have a dry cough and a sore throat, okay, start taking it now. If it progresses to dripping in the trachea, then start getting in a sauna because it dies at a higher temperature. So build your body heat. Get exposed to a Juve light. Okay, so you get UVB and ultraviolet and infrared. Okay, so you're getting healthy amounts of sunlight. And if it goes to the Wuhan pneumonia, get IV vitamin C. We know that people recover with intravenous vitamin C. There's also chloroquine or something. It's like a malaria drug. fantastically effective, but you're talking healthy hot liquids. I mean, do my mom's South African curried potato soup. I mean, get potatoes, get ginger, turmeric. Okay, I mean, black pepper, coconut oil, so you get the healthy fats. I mean, just heat this all up in a vat. I mean, get spices in there. It's fantastic. Now, in the middle of the cold and flu season, it's possible that some people who are being tested for coronavirus do not actually have the infection. Now, after all this stuff I read on the testing, is anyone confident about the testing? Okay, just checking. Okay, symptoms like cough, fever are nonspecific and may occur with other conditions. No kidding. Insufficient test kits, inaccurate test kits, changing a definition of what constitutes a confirmed case, overdiagnosis, and misdiagnosis of the illness make it difficult to determine the real number of those affected. No kidding. So, how do you disinfect your home? For one, you don't want to kill everything. Okay, like you don't want to go in there and scrub everything and wash everything with bleach. Hospitals do that. Okay, they are misinformed and they are stupid. Okay, you have an intimate relationship. You are a symbiote. You have 70 trillion cells. You have 4 times that amount of bacteria. You have 4 times that amount of viruses. If you need this in your gut, you need this on your skin. We have a relationship with it. The pathogenic ones you don't want. So fresh air works. You want to disinfect your house? Open up the doors. Okay? Because you've got flame retardants on the furniture, you've got toxic chemicals in there. I mean, the air is not healthy. Put in green plants that'll start doing that oxygen transfer. I mean, if you've got really ones, get those chrysanthemums. Okay, those things are like toxic magnets. Okay, they'll kill the plant, but it'll save you. Essential oil diffuser, beautiful. Burning sage. The Native Americans would use smoke. Why? Because smoke has antimicrobial properties, and sage smells good. Ozone air purifier. I actually have one of these at home and one of them in the clinic down in Mexico. Non-bacterial cleansers. Why non-bacterial cleansers? Because just the standard cleanser will work fine. You don't want to put chemicals in there that kill the weakened bugs and create stronger ones. Vinegar and water, Doctor's Bonner soap, and turn off the Wi-Fi at night so you can sleep. I mean, this is just common practices. Now, should you do this whether there's a virus or not? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we know that if you want to make the entire world as clean as a hospital, in America, 100,000 people a year die minimum from hospital-acquired infections, because anything they kill that is dead. Anything that lives is stronger than the stuff they killed. Okay, this is where you get the pathogenic bacteria. So this is only based in fear, and it rings a bell for some reason. This is only based in fear. Okay, it can do no good. It's not. It can't possibly do any good. Do you think that? I mean, when the virus is only going to live 5 to 10 minutes on your hands, and washing your hands will work. Okay, with soap and water. Sing happy birthday and you're done. If you're using a toxic Purell, okay, you have to do it for 4 minutes, and you're getting a cancer-causing hormone endocrine-disrupting chemical in your skin. Not a good idea. This one here, the Purell. Hormone disorders, cancer, heart disease, infertility, and diabetes. At the 2-minute mark of washing your hands with Purell, there still was a virus there. At 4 minutes, the virus finally died, but the CDC's recommendation is 15 to 30 seconds. Okay, so now, essential oils, very simple. This is what we use at all of our tables is essential oils. Okay, not just because it smells good, but it helps. Okay, because we deal with a lot of people that are hurt and sick, and it's nice to just have a nice, clean environment. Although if you look at all the studies, kids that are raised in childcare with dogs have way less allergies than kids raised in a sterile home. So we are communal beings. We're designed to live together. Don't be afraid. I know I'm scary. Okay, we're designed to live together in harmony with our bugs and viruses. This is exactly what you can do to strengthen your immune system. And should you do this, to protect yourself from the coronavirus, or should you do this to protect yourself from cancer? Heart disease kills 1 million people a month. 1 million people a month. Do you think they're dying in this country because they're not getting enough drugs? They don't have enough surgeries. No, or they got a shitty immune system. And worse than that, they have stress responses that they're getting medications for. Because honestly, is high blood pressure a disease, or is that a stress adaptation? Is type 2 diabetes a poisoning or a stress adaptation? When you see all our videos, you'll understand it. Although if I said it is inflammatory bowel disease, a stress adaptation or disease, people go ballistic. No, it runs in my family. No, poisoning runs in your family. Supplementation: vitamin C, D3, magnesium, zinc, and selenium, glucose, iodine, activated charcoal, and also to exercise daily. All you got to do is a little bit of aerobics and some weight, but also sleep. Sleep is precious. This is when your body regenerates. What do you think the media frenzy is doing? Do you think it's helping people? There's one thing, and if anyone has information on this, I was told that between May and June of 1940, when the Germans were coming into France, that 80,000 people died, not from German bullets or from anything like that, but from fear. Okay, heart attacks, and everything else, just because they didn't know what was going on. So right now, the fear that this is generating could be along those lines. So I mean, honest to God, get deep sleep at night, turn everything off. Organic plant-based seasonal diet, change your emotional state with the neurolinguistic programming, chiropractic adjustments. I mean, this has been known since 1918, okay, that you get adjusted, your immune system works better. Play, have fun, prayer daily. Good God, with the insanity that's going on in the governments today, prayer, got one guy in charge, I'm cool with that. And essential oils. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's not panic. This wasn't the talk I wanted to put on, but man, this is just nuts. Everybody will survive. I mean, think of in World War I, massive devastation, millions of men dead. Okay, economic depression everywhere, and then World War II, millions of people dead. What does Europe look like after that? It looks like a renaissance. Okay, I mean, right now, I drive a German car. It's Volkswagen. Yeah, I know. I freaking love my car. I drove a Bug all through the 70s. Okay, man, that baby would fix itself. Its name wasn't a Herbie, but it was incredible. Okay, so we look at this. After this is a change. There was a lot of ignorance and stuff that happened in the 1300s. What happened after the Black Plague? The Renaissance. So if you get a chance, there's a movie, and I forget what it's called, Zeitgeist, on YouTube. It's 3.5 hour sections, and it talks about brilliance, about how the world economy is going to be changing. We're talking only in the next 5 to 10 years, but it's more harmonious. Okay, we're all going to be living in more conjunction with our environment. Okay, our animal husbandry practices, we're going to be raising healthy animals to eat if you want to eat them. Okay, we're going to have healthy farming practices where we're going to be growing the soil, not just this toxic food that has no nutrient value. So we're going to be living more the way we should. We can have independent power, not something that's toxic. You can use geothermal, wave, wind, water. Everything is already here, and it's detailed out in that series. So it's going to be a bit challenging now. So prepare yourself. Do not panic. If you have the greatest cure, in fact, well, I do, for the coronavirus, it's this power button. Turn that sucker off or switch it to something that you love. Give yourself joy, because we are going to have harmony in this world, even though the people that are living in disharmony, they're not going to get it. They never will. Okay, does that make sense? Good. Now, thank you very much. Hopefully, this is the last time I'm ever going to talk about the coronavirus. Because I want to talk about shoulder rehab. I know. I know. Next week, shoulder rehab, unless, I'm put in quarantine. Thank you very much.